the wealth of North America. And in fact, that is the way soil has been built throughout history, is with perennials and herbivores. Because see, perennials have a totally different energy cycle than annuals. I don't think I need to say anything that the U.S., the only thing that the U.S. Farm Bill subsidizes is annuals, not perennials. The 6 commodities that they subsidize are annuals. Well, annuals deplete the soil because they extract energy and put it up in these big fat seeds for carbohydrates. Perennials have an opposite energy flow. They take solar energy and sequester it down in root structure and stem because they don't depend on seeds for reproduction. They're perennials. They don't have to be planted every year. So they take energy from up here and put it in the soil. Annuals take energy from the soil and put it up top. And that's why, historically, it took 4 to 5 years of perennial pasture between tillage, between 1 or 2 years of tillage, to replace the fertility that the annuals extracted from the soil. That was the soil building. Well, that was important because that cycle also fed the oxen and the horses and the mules and the draft power. In 1910, the U.S. had 20 million draft animals. Okay? And they're herbivores. And so this pasturage cycle was essentially a way for a farm not only to rebuild their soil, but also to feed, to get their energy, before petroleum came in. So this was a symbiotic arrangement. Well, suddenly, once we discovered petroleum and cheap energy and Faber-Bosch and all those chemical fertilization approaches, suddenly, for the first time in human civilization, we were able to extract ourselves, divorce ourselves from those historically normal energy, carbon, solar, on-farm cycle flows. For the first time in history, we could plow up everything. And so the result is that no civilization in history has ever destroyed more soil faster than the United States. Ever. Because for the first time, we're not moored to these fundamental profit and loss balance sheets in nature. Now, I'm not saying we're the first civilization to destroy our resource base. Plenty have done that long before us, but at least it came slower. We've been able to do it faster. Desertification is occurring faster in the U.S. than it is in any other country in the world. So, here we are with these extremely different kinds of cycles. Well, what that allowed us to do then was with this cheap grain for the first time flowing in the Transcontinental Railroad to be able to transport it. For the first time in human history, we were able to transport large amounts of carbon. Think about it. In nature doesn't move carbon around very much. Leaves fall, the wind maybe blows it over to the neighbor's place. That's about as far as carbon goes. A buffalo, eats grass here, walks a half a mile or a mile, lies down, poops. That's about as far as nature moves it. A bird eats seeds over here, flies a mile or two, poops, roosting in a tree. That's about as far as nature moves. Are you with me? Nature doesn't move carbon very far. In nature's P&L statement, carbon, which of course is solar energy converted to decomposable biomass, that carbon kind of stays on site. Well, suddenly now with cheap energy and the ability to transport large quantities of carbon, for the first time in human history, we have been able to create a totally segregated food system. Because historically, the herbivores, of course, fed close with the perennials. Well, then how did they feed pigs and chickens? What were omnivores for? Well, the reason for omnivores were to consume, to scavenge around the edges of the farmscape, of the landscape, with acorns and mesquite, pine nuts and mesquite nuts and all the mast and just acorns and things that were generated around. You know, George Washington, he was a very meticulous record keeper, and he was always upset that he wasn't able to get a full count on his pigs because they would never get them all in at the same time. They were running around in the woods, you know, and they all trying to get them all in, and then they'd go back, and sure enough, there's some, you know, sow or litter out there, you know, in the back brambles somewhere. But pigs have always been essentially a scavenging operation, a recycling operation around the edges. Chickens, omnivores again, not herbivores, chicken as omnivore, those were always put up close to the kitchens, to where people lived, because they were what recycled the kitchen scraps, blemished fruits and nuts, and spoilage, which was a big deal in the day before refrigeration. But you know what's fascinating is there was far less spoilage before refrigeration than there is today. Do you know that today 50% of all the human edible food produced in the world never gets eaten by humans? But unlike historical normalcy, that spoiled, blemished, whatever, you know, food, that scrap food, rather than being eaten by pigs or chickens, the omnivores, it goes into landfills. And with cheap grain, for the first time, we've been able to amalgamate the animals in feedlots and concentrated animal feeding operations. See, you couldn't have a Tyson chicken house or a Smithfield hog factory 100 years ago. Why? Because with the laborious transportation behind mules and oxen, you simply could not logistically amass enough stuff, enough carbon in one place and move it into a confinement facility to feed all these animals in one spot and move all their manure, carbon, back out and spread it. It was logistically impossible to do it on any kind of great scale. So it inherently created a decentralized food system that was embedded in communities. The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, they were embedded in communities. But with the advent of cheap grain and the ability to move it around and move carbon around for the first time in human history, we were able to consolidate, to amalgamate, to centralize these massive food production factories, because we were able for the first time to be able to move all this stuff in and move all the poop out. Okay? So what happens when energy gets expensive? What happens when it becomes too expensive to move all this carbon around anymore? Well, what happens is we go back to an integrated system rather than a segregated system. Right? Now, what does that mean? What that means is that we're going to rediscover edible landscape. You know, I mean, it's amazing today that we have such a love affair, and I like flowers as much as anybody, but do we really need 36 million acres of lawn? 36 million acres. We got 36 million acres housing and feeding recreational horses. I haven't even gotten to the golf courses yet. I mean, that's enough land to feed our entire country without a single farm or ranch. I mean, our big problem is not land development, it's land abandonment. We have segregated. And so what we do is we expect to grow all of our food on irrigated. I spoke yesterday at Colorado College in Colorado, you know, and the aquifers are depleting, you know, they've got water is water wars, you know. I know where I live, where you live, you know, we don't even think about water wars. But let me tell you, you get out to California and Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, water's a big deal. And so what we've done is we're up here, I'm out there, and we're growing all these lawns, and we're getting our carbon, our food, from irrigated land that's decreasing aquifers and creating big problems in these other areas because it's a segregated system. And so as we deplete water, as energy becomes more expensive, I'm suggesting that we will be reintegrating our food system. I mean, why can't you make it cool? I mean, take a campus like this. Why can't you use GPS technology, divide it up into 150 quadrants of, a tenth of an acre or something apiece, and you got a phone app, and the kids wake up, the college students, they wake up in the morning, and they check their phone app, and it says, the strawberries in quadrant 34 are ready to pick today. So all the students go over and pick strawberries, and eat them. And tomorrow they get up and it says, the apples in quadrant 67 and 89 are ready. So all the kids run over and pick the apples, And the next day they get up and it says, the asparagus in quadrant 5 is ready to pick. So they all go and they, pick theirs. I mean, you don't have to have the dining service. The kids just kind of graze, from class to class. But that's an integrated system. See, I mean, today we give Greenie Awards for dining services that suddenly adopt a composting program, so they separate their kitchen scraps, they'll put it in barrels, it goes on a diesel truck to be shipped out of town 10 miles to a composting facility, so it can be shipped back in to put compost around the roses in the Bartlett Fair. No. The real ecology would be to build a chicken house, hook it up next to the back of the dining services, all the kitchen scraps go into the chickens eat it, convert it to eggs, the eggs go right back inside, and nothing has to be shipped or trucked or diesel fueled anywhere. In fact, if we had enough chickens attached to every kitchen in America to handle just the scraps that came out of that kitchen, there would be no egg commerce in the U.S., and we would drop landfill use by 30%. Talk about killing two birds with one stone. And if you live in an apartment, you say, well, I don't have room for chickens. Sure, you got room for chickens. Throw out the parakeet cage, get rid of the aquarium, put in 2 chickens. One average pet dog generates more poop than 11 chickens, and all you need are 2. They're a lot more functional. They're adorable, okay? I mean, this can be done. A city in Belgium had a local initiative. They gave 3 chickens to any household that wanted them. They had 2,000 households sign up. They gave out 6,000 chickens, and in the first month decreased their landfill waste by 100 tons. I mean, it's unconscionable that in the last 50 years, nearly half of what goes into landfills around the world has been previously animal recycled edible product. And then we get this idea, we get a Greenie Award for somebody that has this idea to go and stick a pipe down in it and collect the methane off of it so we can run all the landfill equipment. Well, that's really ecological. No, what's ecological is for it to never end up there in the first place. See? So when I say an integrated system, that's what I'm talking about. Integrated systems. We even segregate the way we live. We've got the 1,500 square foot houses over here, but if you can only afford a 1,000 square foot house, well, you can build that one over here. Now, we wouldn't want the 1,500 square foot. We'd have to talk to the 1,000 square foot. It's like Dr. Seuss with stars on bars. I had a lady from Texas recently. I was speaking down there, and she came up. She said, "What's my time? Oh, yeah, it is. It's not night. It's afternoon. Okay, yeah. So I had a lady come up to me. She's from Texas, and she says, I just got fined by my homeowners association. I said, what for? She said, because I had the audacity to grow a tomato plant in my flower garden, and my homeowners association has a non-farming, contract in the deed, and tomatoes are farming. I mean.